Welcome to the podcast, The Next Big Thing. I'm your host, Keith D. Terry, a consultant, a coach, and a serial entrepreneur. The mission here is to teach, inspire, and to motivate. Today's episode steps away from the boardroom, policies, and profit margins and into the quiet power of nature. We live in a fast-paced, hyper-connected world, yet more and more people are feeling burnt out, over-medicated, and disconnected from their own well-being. There is a growing movement of people seeking a different kind of healing. My guest today bridges two worlds, the structured, often complex healthcare system and the simple, profound wisdom of nature. She has guided patients through medical red tape, and now she's guiding them through the forest. Dr. Gayle Byck is a certified forest therapy guide, a certified patient advocate. She runs InTune with Nature and InTune Health Advocates. Dr. Byck, welcome to The Next Big Thing. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks, Keith. And I love that intro. I feel like you just kind of put it all together.
Well, thank you. Before we get into the science, I want to start with the human side. Take me back to a moment where you were standing outside in nature and you felt a shift. What happened?
I can share something that happened that was really profound and what made me actually go into the forest bathing and take the forest guide training course. It was in April of 2023. And my dad had just passed away about 6 weeks before. He hadn't been well for a long time. And, things were rough at the end. And my daughter was getting married at the end of May of that year. So it was a stressful time. Let's just put it that way. And I have this, what I call my happy place in Utah that I love to go to.
Okay.
And I asked my best friend from college to meet me there. And as soon as we pulled up and looked out at the state park that borders this adventure spa, they call it, I immediately and physically felt the stress leaving my body from head to toe.
Wow.
And I think that when I got there, my shoulders were like up here. I was so stressed out and they dropped. And I turned and looked at my friend and I said, I'm going to do this forest bathing thing. And that was the moment that, because I had heard about it maybe 4 or 5 years before. And like a lot of people, I laughed when I heard the name forest bathing. And, I didn't really, I knew that I always felt really good in nature. I call it, I need my nature fix.
Okay.
And, I go out to these national parks out west and I feel re-energized. I'd feel calmer. I just felt more in balance. And I just had this need to do that regularly. And then this experience was so profound that I said, I'm going to go ahead and see how I can bring this to other people.
Well, that's interesting because that gets me to my next question. What a great segue that is, because, you've walked both sides. You're walking the healing, high pressure side where, now you're on the quiet side. And I guess that's when you realized that you had to step to the other side. Did you, when did you was it that moment that you made the connection that this would be a part of your business plan?
It really was. And it made sense because all of my clients on the patient advocacy side are stressed out. There's not a single person that reaches out to me that isn't stressed. I once had the daughter of a client, after like a really tough phone call with her dad, call me up after and apologize for how he was just kind of venting and behaving. And I said to her, it's okay. Everyone is stressed. That's why they need me. I don't take it personally. And it's true, whether people are calling me because there's an illness they need help managing, or they're fighting with their insurance company over tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, it's stressful. And so it kind of all connected for me then that, how can we help people have less stress? And I also, a lot of my advocacy clients have been older people with dementia. And all of a sudden, they're being moved into senior communities, memory care facilities, and they're not getting outside that often. Yeah. And some of these people, that was their favorite thing to do. One of my clients used to do 100-mile bike rides, and she'd go for several walks a day. She liked gardening. And I go visit her in memory care, and they're always inside, 98% of the time. Okay. And so I always try to get her outside and just people need it. And I leave these places and I think, I'm going to be so depressed if I'm here one day and I'm stuck inside. It's like you walk out and you almost need to take a deep breath of the fresh air, and so I'm working on how can we bring more nature to people who maybe can't get to the forest or
Gotcha.
can't get to the beach or the mountains. And so
Well,
that's also a connection.
before we do that deep dive, I have one more human side question. And that is, if the world could hear one truth about you that doesn't show up on your LinkedIn profile, what would that be?
Oh, you didn't give me that in advance to think about.
Well,
I'm I'm an empath.
for you.
I really feel what other people's pain, other people's stress, other people's issues, and want to help them. And
Okay.
maybe that doesn't show up in a LinkedIn profile, but I'm really trying to connect with people and help them.
Wow, an empath. That's a pretty powerful tool and trait to have. I mean, has that been something that you've tried to make more pronounced and significant as a part of who you are?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. It's something that I'd say really worked on more in the last 10 years through some things I've done for personal growth.
And just interesting, when did you find out you were an empath?
Oh, I don't know.
Because I
I
wish
think
I was.
I don't know. Again, it's like it's from a lot of work I've done personally and spiritually
Hmm.
and just how I feel when I'm listening or reading stories about other people's pain that
Okay.
I really take that in.
Okay. Okay. So now let's dive in. And so you took, I'm sorry to hear about your father.
Thank you.
You took this trip, you were in nature, and it made you relax. Had you been hearing about forest bathing before then?
I
Was
had
there
heard
a
a little bit about it, and like I said, I just kinda laughed about it. It has a funny name, let's be honest,
Yeah,
let's
it
put that
does.
right out
It
there. It
does.
has a funny name. Everyone likes to make the same joke, which is, "Oh, are we going in the forest and taking our clothes off and taking a bath?" And, no, please keep your clothes on during the experience.
Right.
It's a bath for your senses is what it
Gotcha.
is. But, it
Because
sounded a little weird. I was very focused on that patient advocacy business, and then I didn't give it a lot of thought until that experience after my dad passed.
yeah, and again, I'm sorry to hear that. And now I really understand that because I was going to ask, is there a personal experience that led you there? I guess what I'm asking now, it's one thing to use forest bathing personally, but
Mhm.
you've now stepped in and made it part of your profession. And what was the process of going about getting a certification? First, recognizing that it's a real business. I guess, can you help me to understand that part of it?
Yeah, so, there are these 2 women who run a program called the Forest Therapy School, and I
Uh-huh.
did the training through them. And it was fabulous in that we had a cohort of, I think, around 16 people from not only all over the country, but we even had someone from New Zealand who would be on
Wow.
our weekly
Okay.
Zoom calls.
Okay. Okay.
And so just really connecting with other people who wanted to do this work, and it gave a sense of community to it too. And so I've met others, and we all try to help each other and share. And I'm working on doing programs that aren't always just traditional forest bathing, such as bringing even nature indoors to senior communities and people who can't get out, or doing these full moon programs. And in the evenings where we have a little bit different, we do some forest bathing and some journaling and releasing, what's holding us back, sort of thing. And so just giving lots of ideas and a framework for thinking about the business. And then I've just been basically doing word of mouth.
Okay.
When I started this last year, and if you're in the Chicago area, so you remember the great cicada invasion of
Yes. Yes.
2024.
The 17-year and the 13-year ones. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. So it was a little bit of a rough start because nobody wanted to go out and have cicadas flying at them all the time. But I basically offered a couple like free sessions to people in my networking groups,
Okay.
and then the word started getting out, and I started booking all these programs with different groups. Some businesses do it as an employee wellness type of program or just a treat for their employees, a team building exercise. I've done this with friend groups, with a family, with senior centers, through libraries. It works for really every age and every type of person.
So let's start with the basics. What is forest bathing?
So, as I said, it's bath for your senses. We're
Okay.
immersing our senses in nature. And it started in Japan in the 1980s. And it's in Japanese, it's called Shinrin Yoku, which just means
Mm.
forest bath.
Gotcha.
And as you said in your intro, they started it because of their high tech work culture and what they were seeing in their society as a result of that. People created this concept of forest bathing, and there's a structure to it. We start with a guided meditation
Oh,
that really focuses on awakening all of your senses. And
okay.
then there's a series of invitations. And the invitations are to wander out and notice something. And so, as an example, it might be wander out and listen to the sounds of the forest. And I do a nice quote or poem to lead into each invitation.
Hmm.
And then you have time to wander out and notice whatever the invitation is about, or I make it clearer. The word invitation is very purposeful. If that's not what you want to do or think about or notice, then do something else. It's your
Okay.
time in nature. We like to say in the forest guide community that the trees know what you need. The forest knows what you need.
Got
So you
it.
do what you need.
Got it.
And then we come back after each invitation and we have a sharing circle so people can share their observations or what came up from them. Again, everything's optional in forest bathing. So if you want to pass, you pass. And sometimes people say, you know,
As long as you are in nature, there is a benefit that you
there's
get.
a benefit. Yes. So in a sharing circle, someone might say, oh, I noticed that some of the leaves are soft and some are prickly. Or people might say something like what a woman said this summer, which was, I noticed that the tree was so bent over and weighed down, and it was almost at the point of breaking. But because of the branches fell on another tree, that tree was supporting the first tree and holding it up. And she said that made her realize that she's dealing with something really difficult and she hasn't asked for help and she needs to ask her support system for some
Okay.
help. So the comments are they range. And then after we do the series of invitations, we end with a tea gathering. So again, it started in Japan, so of course it ends with tea. And
Yes.
the tea is about gratitude and reciprocity with the earth and just a time to kind of debrief at
Okay.
the end and talk about the experience. And often people don't want to leave. They're feeling really relaxed and they don't want to go on with their day.
Now, is there a certain, I mean, is there a certain type of forest that you should go to? Certain kind of greenery you should go to? All forests considered the same healing power? How do you look at it?
So the way I look at it, because again, we're in the Chicago area,
Hmm.
so we don't have the vast regal forests of Yosemite or
Right.
Yellowstone or,
Right.
out west. And it still works. So you can go anywhere. You can do this in your backyard. You can, if you're in the city and there's not a lot of greenery, you can find a tree. You could sit on your porch with a plant, and have the experience. You could do it at the beach, in the desert, at any place. Just be outside. You can even do it indoors. As I mentioned earlier, I've been
Got it.
doing things where I'm bringing nature in. We have a long winter here,
Yeah,
and
we do. Yeah, we do.
I like to say there's no bad weather, just bad clothes. But the truth is,
No,
especially
that's
for people who aren't well or who are older, they're not going to go outside in the winter or even in all the extreme heat days we've had this summer.
well.
So
Can you do forest bathing in the winter?
you can. Yeah.
Okay.
In
So
fact,
no.
it can be a wonderful experience.
Okay.
You got that fresh air. You don't have as many other people outside. And it's really interesting to go to the same spot in each season and reflect on how it's changed and what's different. And even connect those to our own life cycles. We've got
I get it.
winter, spring. Yeah,
Well, most people know that nature is good for us, and you've studied it. Are there some surprising outcomes or impacts that happen mentally, physically, and emotionally that that you could talk about?
absolutely. There's really interesting research going on at all the top universities around the world by neuroscientists and others who are studying the effects of nature, including forest bathing, but nature in general, on our health. So I don't think it's surprising to hear about the mental health benefits because I think
No. Yeah.
most people have had experiences where they go out in nature and we feel calmer, less
Yeah. Yeah.
stressed.
Yeah.
our mood is better.
Right.
We're more creative afterwards. There's a lot of really interesting studies and not so surprising. But physically, I find that more surprising. So the trees release something called phytoncides, which protect them from disease and from pests. And the phytoncides can be thought of as like the essential oils of the tree.
Yes.
And when we breathe those phytoncides in, it activates our immune system. It activates what's called our natural killer cells. So there's research going on about, can being in the forest be protective against cancer? Can it help with your cardiovascular health? And there's people who have studied the effects of going in the forest on our blood pressure, our heart rate, our cortisol levels. Cortisol measures stress. So in Japan, they have some designated forest bathing trails, and they've done research where they'll get you at the beginning if you want to participate, and they'll measure your blood pressure, heart rate, cortisol, and whatever else they're studying. And when you come
Wow.
out, they'll take those measurements again, and it all goes in the right direction. And then they
Wow.
followed people over time, and those effects can last for a week or more. So in Japan, your doctor might not write you a prescription for medicine. He or she might write you a prescription to go out in nature for 2 hours every week. So they're
Wow.
looking at it in a different way than most of us are here. There's
Yeah.
also there was a study from, I think it was 1984, where they looked at people who were hospitalized and whether they had a view out their window of some greenery or of that brick wall that sometimes happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
people who had the greenery view were released from the hospital sooner. They recovered faster. There's so much fascinating research going on in the area, but yes, mental health and physical health benefits from being in nature. And we haven't even talked about just the physical activity. Now, forest bathing is not a strenuous hike, and it's really
Yes.
slow paced, but you are outside
Okay.
and you're walking around, and so that's a benefit as well.
Okay. And so emotionally, I would assume that have there been studies on the emotional side of health?
For of being in nature? Well, nature can help your brain release all those happy chemicals: dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin. What else? I'm missing endorphins. There are
Endorphins,
all these,
yes.
right? So that's more your emotional side. It can also help you feel more connected to other people and to the world, to nature, and it can just make you feel good in general,
Well,
which we all need.
I'm a believer in what you're doing. I know I have a daughter that lives in California and she hikes all the time.
Mhm.
I like to get out and ride my bike, and I love riding this lake and greenery and doing different kinds of things. I wonder, because you are a health advocate and you are, Godspeed to you. Are you finding that Western medicine is accepting of what you're doing, and where are the pain points for you?
So I think that just in our country, there's not just the medical professionals, but a lot of
Hmm.
people are looking for that quick fix. Like, give me the
Yeah.
medication and then I'll feel better, right? But I think slowly people are realizing it. I recently bumped into a doctor who I had met when I went. Actually, he ended up being my dad's doctor at the end. And he said, I've been following you on LinkedIn and I'm so fascinated by the forest bathing. And I want to set up a time where we can talk. And I want to see like how, if I could talk to my patients about it or what we could do. So
Oh,
and I just ran into him recently, so we still, we haven't had that meeting yet. But I think that when you take the time to learn about nature, and hopefully we're going to see this slow change, or maybe hopefully it won't be so slow,
yeah.
where healthcare professionals start seeing, the benefits of more holistic approaches to health.
Okay, so you've worked with, this next question is more really I don't want to call it a clinical question, but you've worked with healthy individuals and so some people who are really facing serious health conditions. And I'm going to assume that getting out in nature, can you talk about the impact on both groups, the healthy group and the sick group?
Sure. So one thing I do is I do a monthly nature program for an adult day program. So there's a people with dementia.
Okay.
And we're looking, when you're working with people with dementia, you're looking to create moments of joy for them and to help keep them calm and busy and interested, right? So, every month when I do this program, there's some great moment of joy that happens. One month, this guy came up to me who has dementia and he said, This program has made me remember my childhood home. And there were two trees I could see from my bedroom window when I was a kid. And I'm so happy just remembering that, when his face was lit up, and that probably changed his whole day. Or I did a program for people with dementia and their spouses or care partners, or whoever it came with. And one guy all of a sudden said, I went to Yellowstone once. And his wife, who looked so tired when she got there, just lit up. And she said, you remember that trip we took? And he said, yeah. And they started reminiscing about it. And, for that couple, it changed their day, right? It
Okay.
gave her some hope. It gave her joy and him joy too. So those are a couple examples. I once took a mother and a daughter out on a walk, and the daughter was probably around 30. And the mother had told me that the daughter had severe anxiety, severe ADHD, some other mental health issues.
Right.
And I couldn't quite tell at first, like, if she was there because she wanted to be or just kind of appeasing her mom. But we talked at the beginning, we did the meditation. I gave the first invitation, and she ran out into the woods, like off trail, and just with like a lot of excitement. And when it was time to come back and do our sharing circle, we had to wait for her for a bit. And finally she came, and she just was bursting with excitement. And she's like, this was the most incredible experience. She said, my whole life I have felt judged by everyone. And I've
Wow.
been worried about what people think. And she goes, and you know what? The trees aren't judging me. The trees are just letting me be here with them. And I have never felt so free. And the whole experience went like that. She just couldn't stop talking and sharing. The mother, her mouth was just wide open the whole time. She couldn't believe all that her daughter was just telling us. And I am not a therapist, and I am, very careful not to act in any way like a therapist in those kinds of situations. I just listen, and what most people want is someone to listen to them, right?
Yeah.
And
Yes. Yes.
so she poured out her heart, literally poured out her heart to her mom and I. And at the end, she said, thank you. You've given me a new tool in my coping toolbox. I now
Well,
have a new strategy. She was, I never before thought I could go into nature and it would make me feel this way. So I thought that was an incredibly powerful experience. I also one time had a group of therapists out on a walk, and a woman who wasn't part of the group came up and asked me, what are you guys doing? And I told her about it, and she started sobbing. And she said that her
wow.
mother had just passed away a couple weeks ago. And she's like, I feel like I need this. And then we started talking a bit. Again, the patient advocacy really helped me be there for her because of my knowledge and experience with how to deal with that situation. And she asked me for a hug. And she said, thank you. This made me feel better. And then at the end of the forest bathing walk, the woman who had organized it came up and asked me what what was going on with me and that woman. And when I told her, she started crying also. And she
Okay.
said that she's been caring for both of her parents. And it's so hard. And she just started crying and said she needed a hug. And it was like just this feel good kind of thing. But you just never know what people are going through and how just this experience might
Well,
change them. Being
well,
in nature, somehow it makes you more open and vulnerable, I think.
I understand, and I heard you when you said you're not a therapist. You're careful not to do that, but I hate using the word but I will in this case. And you are a therapist because you're helping folks out there with nature. So how do you approach? You've explained what forest bathing is. Now help my listeners to kind of put us in a session. I come. Do I make an appointment with you? How do I go and engage in this process?
So when people reach out to me, I've been booking these forest bathing experiences as generally through groups or organizations, not having programs where people can just sign up individually.
Hmm.
I've had some people reach out about individual sessions. So generally, it's like a work group, a networking group, a
Oh, got
family,
you. Okay,
something
it's an
like that.
organized entity that's coordinating
Yes.
this.
But
Gotcha.
also people have been reaching out on their own. I'm I've had to do a couple of reschedules with these two people, but a daughter reached out because her mom has ALS and is in a wheelchair, and just they're looking for like different experiences that she can have and still feel alive. and connected. We've had she can't handle the really hot days, so that's why we've had to do some
Gotcha.
rescheduling. But, it can be that, or it can be you sign up through your local library and they bring me in, or, your business brings me in to do a program.
Okay. Okay, that's wonderful. That you have to be in is there a minimum time frame you have to be engaged in nature versus or a maximum?
So
How do you prescribe this?
so the research says that, like, an hour and a half to 2 hours or more is ideal, but
Per
not
day?
ev not per day, like in a
Okay.
week, say,
I
like, or
gotcha.
in one time that they talk about, like, to drop in to really, like, get that relaxation can take an hour and a half.
Gotcha.
But I've seen it happen much quicker, and the truth is most of us don't have an hour and a half or 2 hours, or more at a time, but we could get benefits from a few minutes. Have you ever just needed to walk around the block to clear your
Well,
mind?
what's interesting is, I think people have the time, they don't make the time.
Well,
And
that's a good
and
point.
because, I think this because, one of the questions I was gonna ask you is, do you think our modern society, especially here in the United States, is making people sick?
I do. I
You
do.
know,
I
I
saw a statistic that on average, kids have less than 7 minutes a day of outdoor playtime,
on
and
7
that
minutes?
yeah, I
Wow.
read that just the other day. I've seen stats that 93% of Americans are in 93% of our time is spent indoors. And other cultures aren't like that. I was
Mhm.
very lucky that I got to go to Norway at the beginning of March. And Norway and the Scandinavian countries have a concept called friluftsliv. I always have to pause when I say it so I say
Right.
it right. And basically it means the joy of outdoor living. And think about those are cold countries, cold climate countries, and people are outside every day,
Mhm.
regularly. And it's just part of their culture that they do this year round, that if you wanna leave work early on Friday and you tell your boss, "Free loose live," and your boss says, "Have a good weekend," And, like, it's part of their culture, and they're healthy and they're happier. You look at those studies of what are the happiest countries of the world, and a lot of them are those cold climate countries, but they have a real affinity for nature and for just getting outside.
And so I don't know how to really structure this question, but as an empath and someone who's seen Dr. Gayle Byck before using forest bathing and after, do you make what's your therapeutic approach for caring for you? You're helping folks on the health advocacy side, which is you already said it was stressful. And now you're helping people on the forest bathing side, which could be stressful because people are new to it, a lot of questions, and expecting maybe a microwave approach that they'll be healed in 30 seconds or 30 minutes. Take me through what you do for you.
I like to get outside. And from the forest bathing, I've pushed myself to get outside on those cold days where it used to be easy to say, it's freezing out, but I'm, bundling up and getting out. And it's really made a difference.
So are you
Just
walking?
walking. Yeah, you can just walk. I just walk in
Okay.
the neighborhood. There was one day this winter, it was freezing, and I just woke up in a miserable mood. You know how that
Okay.
happens
Yep.
sometimes.
Yep.
And I
Yep.
said, I just bundled up and I just took a walk over to the park nearby where there's a little creek. And I saw these ducks playing in the water. And I watched them for a few minutes and I just was so happy from watching the ducks. And then I walked back and I felt like a new person, and it totally changed the rest of my day. So I'm really kind of leaning in more to getting outside even on the days where it's not so comfortable temperature wise.
Can you give me a specific story about a time when getting out in nature changed someone's circumstance and you just described it? You woke up in a bad mood and
Yeah.
voila.
Sometimes even just going out, like a lot of us work from home now, and work outside. Take your laptop outside and do some work there and get some fresh air.
What kind of resistance, what kind of are you finding that hospitals and the healthcare systems are embracing this, or is it insurance driven?
I would say I haven't gone after either of those approaches.
Okay.
Just been kind of putting it out there to the general public.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say something and I forgot, but
Well, no, the only reason I was going to ask is I would assume that people pay for this, or is it totally volunteer
yes.
that you do?
No,
Okay.
I do have a fee.
Okay.
Again, a lot of times because it might be through a library or senior center or business or something, people aren't paying individually. And I also have a lot of programs with the Cook County Forest Preserves that I've been doing, so people aren't paying individually. It's more the organization paying me at this
I
point.
understand. And I guess I see value in utility, and I would assume that the ramp up rate or the usage rate would increase significantly if both of the entities that I mentioned, healthcare providers and insurance, would back this. You haven't approached it, but
You've
I would.
given me a great idea. I honestly don't see insurance covering it. Just that's a whole other conversation, our health insurance system.
Yeah, it sure
But it's
is.
a really interesting idea to approach some of the big hospital systems, healthcare systems in our area, about how to offer this as a wellness program.
And companies too. I
Yeah,
mean, I tend to think that people are under stress,
yeah.
and taking a walk. If you remember during COVID, a lot of people got outside and walked.
Mhm.
They walked. I have some really dear friends, and they got out and walked miles every day because who wanted to stay in the house all the time?
Right.
They had their masks on, but they walked. And I knew one person that was incredibly uptight that they were calmer after they were out. And so I kind of like that.
I once took a work team on a walk, and there were a bunch of women who were like young mothers. They had little kids. And, just the experience. My kids are older now, but when I had to get them up and ready for school and myself ready for work and everyone out the door, it's pretty stressful. Those mornings are high stress and everyone's yelling at each other. And one of the women at the end said, she goes, "This experience made me realize that if I could just get myself outside for 10 minutes each morning before I wake the kids up, I think the whole morning thing would be calmer and the whole day would be better for all of us." So that's like tied into like how can we help people working, get have less stress and have the time to do this. Wouldn't it be great if employers would say like, all right, in the middle of the day we're gonna have a 10-minute or 15-minute, whatever break where everyone can go outside. And there's a concept called sit spot where you just go
Okay.
outside and you sit and you give yourself permission to do nothing, for the 10
Yeah.
minutes. And that's really like we do this on the forest bathing walks. And some people look at me like, what? You want me to sit and do nothing? Yeah, I want you to sit and do nothing. And so it's hard for people. You have to kind of get used to it. But then you come back and you just feel refreshed and you feel re-energized and you're more creative. I mean, at the end of that work group walk I mentioned, people they were brainstorming about how they could do things. It was a group that like they own and manage a lot of shopping malls. Like how
Hmm.
could they bring more nature experiences to the malls for people who come or for the people who work there? And all of a sudden their brains are going and they're thinking of all these things because they just had this quiet time like to calm their minds.
I'm going to put some people in my family on blast. I have people in my family that don't like to go outside, and I think they're crazy for it.
I call them nature hesitant.
Okay. I'm glad you're going there. So how do you deal with those types of people who
Well,
are nature hesitant?
sometimes I get nature hesitant people on the walks, and maybe they were kind of coerced into it by a spouse or something like that. And they'll tell, like, I took a group out on Sunday, and one of the guys said to me, he goes, "I'm an indoor husband. I was just forced to be here." And you know what? My approach is like, I'm just glad you're here experiencing this. And, like one of the invitations I often try to do is about touch, getting people to actually touch the trees, the plants, the
Oh, do
flowers,
you? Okay.
because well the tactile response, the sensory stimulation is so important to all of our well-being. And so like just trying to get people to touch things. And the
Because I was gonna.
nature has folks, they don't want to touch, like they're nervous. So I said, don't touch, just look. Again, it's like do whatever works for you in that moment. We're just glad you're here outside.
So
And
let me
hopefully
ask you
then they
this. I,
experience it and enjoy it and want to do it more.
I understand. Is it better to Let's talk about the sensory part. I'm glad you brought that up. Is it better to just take a walk, or should you walk and have and use your sensory senses?
I think using your senses is great. So often when we walk, we're listening to a podcast or talking on the
Or
phone with a
music.
friend or
Right.
music, or we're with a friend and we're walking and we're not really taking it all in, and or we're walking for exercise, right? You're just power walking. And so part of what we do in forest bathing is you are just slowing down, you're taking it all in, and it's really magical. It's just a magical experience, like for your senses. But I'd say walking is better than not walking. And as we talked about before, like being in your backyard or on a patio with just one plant is better than not being outside, even though the forest is probably best. Someone once said to me in the years ago, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
Mm,
Whatever it doesn't have to be ideal to get these benefits.
mm. That's brilliantly said. Don't let the
Yeah.
perfect be the enemy of the good. And
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 there's
you know,
something also called awe walks. I learned this from an eco-gerontologist out in California. And that's just the idea that, like, go on a walk and find something that you can be in awe of.
okay.
So she did a video where she was in a grocery store parking lot and there was a tree and she like just sat by the tree, and just to illustrate this. And the science behind awe is very similar to the science behind nature. Like it makes you less stressed. It makes you feel, less anxious. It just gives you a sense of connection to things, to the world.
Now, for those kids that are in the urban areas where it's a concrete jungle, is being outside in the city different or the same?
You have to adapt to what you have available to you.
Okay.
Right. So again, that's where the one tree comes into play, or just, finding a little park near you where you can enjoy some greenery.
So the key is greenery. I got it. I get it now.
Well, yeah,
It's not outside. It's being
or
connected to
even like
something green.
gardening. You know, plant some stuff in your yard, on your deck, whatever you have. There's a bacteria in the soil, which when we get
Yes.
our hands in there, it improves our mood. Can improve our cognition. So like get your hands in there and garden. There's so many ways to bring nature in. Like I love being in the forest. I love being in the mountains. We don't have any mountains in Chicago, so
They
I'm not
sure don't.
getting to the mountains. But
Right.
like you just kind of find what works for you, and and it's definitely tougher in urban areas, but I think what we're hopefully going to see is more urban planning, more design using something called biophilic design, which is just a way of trying to bring nature in. So, like, how can we bring in more natural light into an
Yeah.
office? Can we have green
Well,
walls?
I think it'll help some of the violence happening in some of the inner cities and all across America. I mean, it's just everybody seems to be so stressed out on everything. What do you think are some of the obstacles keeping people from seeking this kind of healing? Is it because they don't know about it, or are there other obstacles?
I think some of it is not knowing about it. I definitely spend a lot of time in my intro and overview at each forest bathing program talking about the health benefits. And I can see the light bulbs going off in people's heads. Like, oh, I'm not just out here to hug trees, or like do some weird hippy dippy new age kind of thing. Like
Right.
this is real. There's science behind it. And then, that really seems to like hook people in, is just that understanding about what nature does. So I think education and awareness is important. I also think something that you've been touching on is, what about the accessibility of nature? If you're
Hmm.
in urban areas, you don't have nature as we think about it. So it's like kind of reframing, what nature can I find? What nature can I bring in, into my immediate world so that it's accessible. And most nature is free. Hopefully like the cost issue goes out the window, because anyone can go find a place, along Lake Michigan to walk. Our
Yeah,
forest preserves are free. I was
absolutely.
actually amazed to learn that the Cook County forest preserves are 11% of all the land in Cook County. So we live in an area where like there's been a real commitment to
There has been.
preserving nature. I don't want to go off track into difficult areas, but I am concerned about what the future holds in
Are
terms of
you?
nature.
Well, tell me about
Well,
that.
Well, there's all the climate change issues, pollution, protecting our public lands,
I see.
from development, that sort of thing.
I see. I see. The impact on actual nature itself. Yeah,
Yes.
I concur with you. And I think there are a lot of people who do. However, some of the governments across the globe are starting to shift their so called policies of
Hmm.
greenhouse gases, things of that nature. And so if we were to go the other way though, if people did adopt a nature-based healing system, just tell me, pontificate for a moment. 10 years from now, what do you think the outcome is for America?
I think we'd have people just a lot happier and better place mentally and physically too. The getting outside helps you want to move your body. And then we talked about, the effect on the immune system. But I think really to make change, we need to get the young people outside, right? So that they grow up appreciating nature. We could have a whole show talking about screens and technology and safety issues, as you were
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
alluding to before of being outside. But, just making sure people know how good they can feel out in nature and what it does for you. I mean, a lot of times people walk out of the walks, and I'm not pushing the climate issues and the politics, but you feel more connected to the environment, and that makes you wanna take care of it. So, like, how can we protect it? And when people don't know all this like, I took a group out yesterday, and one of the guys just couldn't stop talking about how he lived 5 minutes from the forest preserve we were at, and he had never been there. And he couldn't stop talking about, "It's so beautiful. This is amazing. I can't believe this is literally 5 minutes from my house, and I don't do
Yeah.
this?" And so it kind of woke him up to, and I would call him one of the nature hesitant ones, but, like, he was mind blown about the experience and about how there was so much natural beauty right here in the suburbs.
What do you think the impact of AI is going to bring to forest bathing, if anything?
Hmm. I'm not, like, that up on AI. I'm trying to think about
It
how it
may
could
be nothing.
replace. I don't know. I mean, I'm almost thinking about how, like, a lot of times you can be indoors, like Peloton, right? You can do a Peloton bike ride and watching the video of being in the forest,
I do that,
you know, things like
and I
that.
love it.
I don't know if that kinda counts under the AI thing, but I guess, could be more of that going on, but you're
Oh,
not gonna
yeah.
get all the benefits,
Yeah.
you're not breathing in the phytoncides, you're not touching the trees and everything, and you're not it's just different.
And are you finding caregivers are embracing forest bathing?
Yeah, I mean, with the groups, the dementia groups especially, like, the caregiving is probably one of the, if not the hardest job out there, right? And these people they're underpaid and they're doing a lot of work that isn't appealing to a lot of people, right? And they need a lot of patience. And so getting outside helps people who aren't well as their caregivers because it provides a calming environment and calming activity for both of them.
Okay.
And one of the things I'll do when I do programs more for those groups is I'll give them a handout at the end of like 20 easy things you can do outside. Because again, it's like making sure people know, like, oh, we could go outside, we could make a bird feeder, we could do leaf rubbings, we could paint rocks, like all these simple things and you could do
Right.
them with your grandkids. It
Right.
could be intergenerational. One of my favorite outcomes was a woman came to one of my walks and she was friends with someone I know. So that's how the story got back to me. But she was doing a family vacation 2 weeks later with her kids and grandkids. And so she did a modified forest bath the first day, and her teenage grandkids loved it. And every day she came up with another nature activity for them to do. And they were able to connect and they had something to talk about at dinner every night.
Okay. Okay.
Like that's a fun outcome of what happened is that she brought it to her family.
My last question for you. If this mic that you have in front of you, it was your final chance to leave a message for the next generation of caregivers, what would that message be as it relates to forest bathing?
A message to caregivers?
Yeah. Or anyone you pick the group.
Well, I think to everyone is get outside, experience just all the beauty we have out here. give yourself a chance to connect to nature, connect to other people who are out there, and, let it just let yourself be. It's really comes down to just learning how to be present and mindful. And I think that experiences we can have with forest bathing can help us in our personal relationships as well as professionally. Just that learning to listen, right? You're listening to the forest. You're noticing things. And when you listen to people and you notice people, they feel good and you
Yeah.
connect.
Well
And
said.
we need that. We need those
Well said.
connections.
Dr. Gayle Byck, thank you so much for being a part of the show. You've shown us that healing doesn't necessarily always come from the inside, that it comes from outside as well. Your work is a reminder that sometimes the most powerful medicine is the simplest, and that is being
Mhm.
outside, being present, slowing down, and connecting to the world around us. Thanks for listening to The Next Big Thing. I'm your host, Keith D. Terry. If you've enjoyed this episode and you'd like to support this podcast, please share it with others. Post about it on social media or leave a rating and a review. To catch all the latest from me, you can follow me on my YouTube channel at Keith D. Terry. If you want to recommend a guest, please email me at info@terryperformancegroup.com. This has been produced by your host and Jade Productions.